you get on these tough hills, like really tough to surmount. And a lot of times you feel like just putting your feet down. And all you have to do is think about those kids in India or somewhere like that don't have the access that we have, and knowing that what I'm doing is for a much bigger cause. And you kind of just put your head down and you just grit your teeth and you push up that hill anyway.
Welcome to Where Hope Begins, the Save One Life podcast, one country, one community, and one life at a time. I'm your host, Kai, and today we're talking about Wheels for the World 2026, Save One Life's signature fundraising event and biggest annual ride, created to bring our global community together in motion, in purpose, and in support of families living with hemophilia and other bleeding disorders around the world. Wheels for the World began in 2012 when community member Barry Hardy, who lived with hemophilia, rode his bicycle across the country to raise awareness about Save One Life and to generate funds to support programs in developing countries for those who not only have a bleeding disorder without treatment, but live in severe poverty. His first ride sparked something powerful. Barry went on to complete 6 cross-country rides, raising more than $250,000, and after his passing in 2018, Save One Life committed to carrying his legacy forward through this annual event. And joining me today are 3 members of that legacy, our cross-country riders from the past 3 years, Ujjwal Bhattarai, Doug Mildram, and Vaughn Ripley. We're going to start with their personal connection to hemophilia, because that's where every meaningful mile begins, and then we'll get into what it's actually like to take on a cross-country ride for Wheels for the World, what the experience gives back, and why it continues to matter so much. So we'll start with you, Doug. Can you just tell listeners a little bit about your connection to hemophilia?
Sure. I really became connected through my girlfriend, Lori Kelly, who was the founder of Save One Life, and I've seen Ujjwal and Vaughn at multiple events throughout the years. I learned quite a bit about hemophilia and the community and the mission of Save One Life. So I saw many different things in quite a condensed period of time, but it was very interesting for me, and I was very anxious to become involved and try to help in any way possible.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And how about you, Vaughn?
I was born with type A hemophilia and was in the community as a kid, and then, through circumstances with the bad blood and everything, kind of fell away from the community for decades, actually. And then I was brought back into the community, ironically, by Barry Hardy, who kind of started this whole long bike ride premise. And he basically kind of put my arm behind my back and twisted it up and said, get back in the community and start, helping the younger generation. So here I am.
That's great. And I love to hear that, some kind of like a mentor figure, guiding you back in. That's really great to hear. And how about you, Ujjwal?
So basically, my connection to the hemophilia community comes from my son, who has factor 9 Hemophilia B, severe. And then obviously with connection with Laurie and I were one of the first few board members who started actually Save One Life. And that was back in 1999-2000 era. So it has been like over 25, 26 years that basically that journey has started, and it's really amazing to see, how far it has come so far.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. And, I think on that kind of note, Ujjwal, what is it about the connection to Save One Life that you find most valuable in you and your son's life?
I think that is such a great question. I think it has so much profound meaning in our lives, in all 3 of our lives, me, my wife, Sunita, and Nitya, who is also, very heavily involved with the hemophilia community now. And that's really, I'm blessed that he has built that bond, blood brothership with his, all his friends, and he is doing all kinds of advocacy events. As you know, it goes to the mission and vision of Save One Life, which is to help kids around the world with health-related issues, educational support, medical factor, and all that. So for us, me personally being from Nepal and seeing people in need, and, Laurie has advocated for those children for all her life. Something we typically forget is once we are sponsoring kids from US to, let's say, Nepal or India or any other countries, program partners that we have, is that hope that we bring to the lives of the people. And that brings them along and gives them, ability to fight with everything in their day-to-day life.
That's really well said. And, Vaughn, as someone who was part of the community, left the community, and now that you're back in the community, what's the biggest piece that maybe is being fulfilled now that maybe you didn't have in years past?
Well, the biggest thing would be living in the community as an adult, right? As a child, it was more about the little fun events and things like that. But now seeing what the community as a whole is doing, not only raising awareness and being advocates for us, but also teaching us how to be advocates, seeing the power of what a community can do. So I guess it's like the child, having a blast, and they're doing the right things because that's what you need to do for the kids. But as an adult, seeing what kind of impact can we make? What kind of changes? What kind of difference can we make, especially in these children's lives?
And for you, Doug, as someone who doesn't have hemophilia, what's the biggest kind of piece that's played for you personally, this connection to save one life?
I was overwhelmed with how much the different events, the stories that the people I talked to, both young and older people, just overwhelmed by the strength of the community and how tight it was and how direct the results were. So something like I see it every day here because they deliver Factor to our house almost daily to get redistributed throughout the world. But see how quickly it goes from here. It's a very streamlined organization right to the end user. So all the events I went to, I saw the people there that were helping to support, but then I saw the people who needed the support, and I was just amazed at how tight it was and how quickly the support got to the people in need of support. And that, from someone who didn't have an experience with hemophilia, but did understand the healthcare system, that just overwhelmed me. And I was very excited to try to help in any way.
Yeah, and you can imagine the logistical nightmare I'm sure it is at times to receive that and get it distributed. And it is, again, shouting out to the program partners all over the world that help facilitate those connections. So Doug, let's start with you. Let's talk about Wheels for the World. How many years have you participated in? I guess, what does it look like?
I'd say approximately about 6 or 7. And I've seen Ujjwal and certainly Vaughn at multiple events. And as Vaughn had mentioned before, I think the thing that really just captivated me was I met Barry Hardy, so many years ago after he had completed a ride across America, and he was explaining it to me. And I was just overwhelmed by the whole process, really. And then going to some of the different events throughout, the U.S. that were sponsored. Again, I'll get back to what I said. I just could not believe the tie-in, and this was in the U.S., the tie-in for all the different regions and all the different groups, small and large. And I just thought it was a fantastic way to galvanize. And Barry sort of being the head of it all because he was really the first one to really put it together. So I was just excited to become a part of that.
Ujjwal, we'll go to you now. I guess, do you start in a city and end in a different city, or is it different for different participants? Tell us a little bit about what that piece is like.
We have these long distance bikes, like Doug was talking about. We had Hardy Beer started that, and that was cross country. And the 1 year that I was able to participate on that long one, it was a relay. So it was, I think, one of the only ones where we have done cross-country relay of like 3,400 miles or something like that. And I was part of that. And then there are virtual ones. Let's not forget about hundreds of those riders who are doing the same ride, Wheels for the World virtually from wherever they are. And even around the COVID time, I did 100 miles virtually. I was not riding with Dog. I wish, it's always fun, Dog. I have so many memories. But then these rides can be happening anywhere. For example, another really good one is a Niha ride that used to happen in Rhode Island. And then we had few in Mass. We had few, all around the country, to be quite honest.
That's amazing. So I think for listeners, just a reminder, this isn't about biking across the country. And of course, if you want to,
yes,
please do. But it does sound like it can be, kind of like maybe these very abbreviated moments to help raise money. And so, Vaughn, let's talk about the emotional experience, because obviously there's a physical aspect to this. And as someone with hemophilia, I'm sure there are considerations at play. But I guess what helped you kind of get through that moment? What was preparation like?
Well, guys like Doug and Barry, for one thing, knowing that the things that they've done and knowing that I'm capable of that too, obviously, is a big part of it. But really, I don't want to sound cliche, but it's the cause. That's what carries you. You get on these tough hills. And like I mentioned, Vermont earlier when we were chatting, these hills are tough, like really tough to surmount. And a lot of times you feel like just putting your feet down. You know what I mean? And all you have to do is think about those kids, like Ujjwal mentioned, in India or somewhere like that don't have the access that we have, and knowing that what I'm doing is for a much bigger cause. And you kind of just put your head down and you just grit your teeth and you push up that hill anyway. So that's where I draw a lot of mine, is just, I couldn't do it on my own. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to have, and a cause is a perfect thing to push you.
Got it. No, that makes perfect sense. What's the time commitment kind of feel like? So if someone's going to participate, because I know there's the fundraising piece, so you could just talk to us a little bit about what that picture looks like?
Well, I want to start with a disclaimer. I don't want to scare anybody away. But if you're doing a long ride, it is going to require some time, right? I mean, obviously, you're going to need to train unless you want to break your body or, do irreparable damage. You will have to train, and you'll have to train for quite a while leading up to a long ride. But some of the rides that like Ujjwal is talking about and that Doug and I have done don't require anywhere near the level of training. And to do it at the level that, say, for instance, Doug and I are riding might require more training than if you're just kind of trying to complete the ride, but you're not racing yourself. You know what I mean? And you just want to make that distance. Well, then it's not going to require as much. I think you're looking at just a little bit of saddle time for some of the shorter rides. And if you're looking to get crazy, like some of us, then you're going to be in the saddle pretty much every day of the week for a couple months, riding for at least 1 or 2 hours, depending on the length of the ride that you're doing. So it varies so much, it's impossible to really wrap your arms around it. I guess you have to ask yourself, how much time do I have to dedicate to this? If I only have 20 minutes a day for 4 days a week, that's totally doable, but it's a smaller ride,
right,
that your goal is. But if you say, I'm willing to do 90 minutes a day and 1 long ride a week, really the sky's the limit.
Mm-hmm.
You could do any of these rides on a training program like that, but it does take a couple months. Here's the good news, though. Those couple months aren't for nothing or just for that single goal. Imagine what you're doing for your body and your physiology during that time. Plus, what about the tens of thousands of hemophiliacs that are watching you? So how many lives are you changing by them seeing you go through this regimen? So I would highly recommend, if you are training for something like that, you also kind of put it on your social media or whatever you do so that you're being an advocate for those around you and you're raising awareness while you're training, not just on the ride. And that's where the time commitment comes in with the fundraising.
Wow.
Right. That's when that really happens. While you're training, it's like, hey, I did this grueling 2-hour ride today for training. By the way, this is what I'm doing it for. Please help if you can. And quite honestly, it's the most important part, right? Because what's going to get these children in India factor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so well said. And I think, you talked a lot about the physical benefits, obviously, of training and the ride itself. But Doug, if we could talk a little bit, was there an emotional moment that you had maybe as part of the ride, maybe at the end of the ride? Talk to us just kind of about that experience, for your mental health that this event does for you.
Sure. So I was doing the cross country ride. I was in about the 6th day of it, going up, as Vaughn had indicated, in Oregon, some brutal hills. It was a long, long day. It was about 120 miles. The hills came at the end. I was really tired. I mean, it was really difficult. I got to the hotel and before we got to the hotel, I was thinking, what did I get myself into? Right. And then I got there and I was tired, but then I had a chance to reflect a little bit. I said, okay, this is what you sign up for. And Ujjwal Bhattarai said, the purpose is a lot bigger than you. You'll get to rest tonight. You'll be back tomorrow. And then in a few days, we had a rest day. And for my cross-country ride across the U.S., there were 4 rest days. And each rest day was tied into a Save One Life event, which was a shorter Wheels for the World. So I went to the first one. And I didn't ride. I just watched. And we had about 15 or 20 riders for Wheels for the World. And they did a much shorter ride, as Vaughn had indicated. And it was just fantastic to watch. It can be any single level. There were people there riding 5 miles, 10 miles, 20 miles. We had a beautiful little luncheon. I talked to some young people. It was very community oriented. After that, I still had about, 3,000 miles left to go. And that just said, okay, this no problem here, because you just saw a bunch of people who, some of them, was a big commitment to do 10 miles, right? And I talked to a lot of them, and it was just, very uplifting for me and just reassuring that, yep, you're in the right place.
Yeah, absolutely. And how about for you, Ujjwal, for you and your son, can you talk a little bit about that emotional experience?
So it definitely needs to come from why you are doing this. It's not definitely, just a bragging rights. And And the purpose, again, is not to race, like Doc said. You don't have to sort of like, there are riders who are amazing. They could do like really record PRs. That's not what we were looking for. Our objective is basically to finish it, raise awareness, raise funds for Save One Life, and spread the word out. And at the end of the day, what we want is, as the name suggests, Save One Life, right? That's basically where it all connects to, is as we were passing the Save One Life flag from in our relay team, that was sort of a connection moment. So when, I was handed the Save One Life flag, I had the bike, the flag on my bicycle. All of a sudden, oh my God, now I have a responsibility. I need to bring this flag to the next destination. That was the St. Augustine beach for me. So into the Atlantic from Pacific. So I think that gives us that strength and why you are here, right? To answer that question, why, that basically is the answer.
Yeah. What a cool moment to get that flag, and probably the spirit you probably had as you finished that out.
I have it right here in my office. So it's
Very
pretty cool. It's inspiration every day.
Sure. And what a metaphor that we're riding our bikes, a form of transportation, raising money to get people all over the world transportation, in some cases too, right? The medical assistance that they need. So, well, thank you all for being here. It was really remarkable that we managed to align 3 schedules in, I think, 1 email. That'll never happen again, I think, in my life. But if you could just sum it up for yourself, like someone who's listening, again, there's the big version, but there's also the smaller rides that are available. Doug, we'll start with you. What's just one reason or one way you could kind of sum up like the importance of participating in this event?
Yeah, and I just kind of reinforce what's been said. But I think the greatest thing about this is it can be a few miles or it can be many miles. And it's one of the riders that I was riding with on the cross-country ride, he summed it up best. He said, look, just ride your own ride. So I think that's what everyone does. And Ujjwal brought it out earlier. We're both in the Northeast, so we train in these terrible conditions. So an indoor bike, Peloton, exercise bike inside, that's perfect. You get tremendous benefit by doing just a little. And then see how you like it and see what you can get from it. But just, there's just a huge range. So it's really open to anyone, any fitness level, and just ride your own ride and do the best you can.
Great. And how about you, Vaughn?
For me, it's twofold, right? And I agree with everything that everybody said, but really, obviously, we're doing this for the community, and that's a huge key and very important. But there's a second piece that sometimes we don't like to talk about. And that's, for me, life is an adventure. And I don't want to be on my deathbed remembering all those times that I sat on the couch with potato chips watching The Simpsons. I want to remember the crazy stuff that I did, the fun times that I had and stuff like that. It's easy for me to kind of put those two together as a hamburger and eat it.
Yeah, I love that. And how about you, Ujjwal?
So basically, I remember around 2010 is when we had a Save One Life gala event in New York City, where Barry was there in person. That was one time, among many, I had chance to spend some good time with Barry. And then we're talking about, as I introduced my son to him, I saw the awe in my son's face, who was around 10, 11 years old at that time. Like, he saw him and he felt like he was meeting a superhuman, because he had done so much. He just had finished the first cross-country bike ride. All of us thought that was physically impossible to ride a bicycle from, West Coast to East Coast, right? So I saw that awe in his face, and that kind of inspired me, oh my God, this is a big deal. Riding a bicycle, it was sort of we always ride, all of us ride, but ride with a purpose, right?
Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for being here. To learn more about Wheels for the World 2026, visit saveonelife.net and head to the fundraising section for more information. This year's event is completely virtual, giving people all around the globe the chance to come together in solidarity for families most in need. And all wheels count. Whether you ride a bike, scooter, motorcycle, or something else entirely, there's a place for you in this movement. Registration opens on April 17th, World Hemophilia Day, and runs through November 14th, which is Barry Hardy's birthday. And this year, Richard Williams will continue Barry's legacy by riding across the country on his motorcycle starting in August. And of course, to learn more about Save One Life and how sponsorship transforms lives, visit saveonelife.net/sponsorship. If you'd like to support the Save One Life mission, please follow the show, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who believes dignity and opportunity should never depend on geography. I'm Kai, and this is Where Hope Begins, the Save One Life podcast. One country, one community, and one life at a time. Thank you for listening to Where Hope Begins, the Save One Life podcast, because when one life is supported, generations can be transformed. Presented by Save One Life in partnership with Balancing Life's Issues. Produced by me, Kai. Got an idea for the show? Send me an email at kai@balancinglifesissues.com. Did today's story move you? Sponsor a child at saveonelife.net/sponsorship. Anything else to add, Miles?
Yeah, Dada.